We're backpacking around the Balkans, and in this episode we're travelling from Bosnia to Greece. And if you're new around here, we're Lauren and Craig, a British couple that have been travelling the world together since 2008. So join us as we hitchhike our way around the Balkans, climb crazy cliffs and meet a wild bear. We crossed the border from Montenegro into Bosnia and Herzegovina, and straight away a bird shat on Craig's face.
Can you get it off my face?
After a night staying in a cute town near the border and checking out this beautiful church, we headed to Mostar. This is a must-visit place if you're heading to the Balkans. It's set by this crystal clear river, and you can usually see locals jumping off this famous bridge which is used for the Red Bull diving competitions. We attempted a day trip from Mostar, but we missed the bus and had to wait 2 hours until the next one, so we decided to hitchhike, and even that failed. So we got a traditional coffee to cheer us up, and eventually we made it to this Islamic spiritual house. The setting was really beautiful, so I'm glad we finally made it here. Another day trip we did was to Krivika waterfall, and this place is pretty hard to visit without a car or a tour, so we got a bus as far as we could go and then we hitchhiked. And as luck would have it, the guy that picked us up actually lived down at the waterfall, so he got us in for free without having to pay the entry. The waterfalls were really impressive, but it was a pretty busy place. We just spent a few hours there relaxing and swimming in the cool water, and when it was time to leave, we successfully hitchhiked with 3 different cars to get back. The next day we caught a train for just €6 each to Sarajevo, the capital of the country, and it took 2 hours for the journey. And we picked a really stupid place to stay, way out the city. The old town was really cute with lots of coffee shops, but we're not really city people. But we did decide to do our first ever walking tour where we learnt about the history of the city. It was pretty crazy that you could still see all the holes in the buildings from the bullets and shells. We had one more stop off in Bosnia, which was this riverside town right by the border of Serbia, where we paid €3.50 each to swim in this weird radioactive water. Just across the border in Serbia, we arrived in the little village of Mokra. There are a couple of attractions in the area. One was Timber Town, which is this old movie set, and the other is a scenic train journey, which we were about to hop on. It was a 2.5-hour trip, passing some beautiful scenery along the way, and we went through so many tunnels which were completely pitch black. On the way back, the driver stopped at the different stations so we could get off the train and enjoy the view. Our next stop in Serbia was Tara National Park, but getting there was pretty tricky, so we got a bus part of the way and we hitchhiked the rest.
Yeah.
We then hitched another ride towards the national park where we got to see these really cool floating houses. The next day we walked to the Drina River where we got a view of this famous house built on a rock. And it was scorching hot, we were dripping with sweat. We had a long travel day making our way to the south of Serbia, and we kept missing our bus connections, so we had a 2-hour wait between each one and so many dirty toilets to use in between. But the next day we wanted to make our way to Kosovo, and we realised the north of the country wasn't advised to travel through. So we had to change all our plans and go through Montenegro first and then cross into Kosovo. Annoyingly, the bus we were on was delayed because it waited for a family to arrive at the bus stop, which meant we missed our connection, and then we were stuck in Montenegro and couldn't get to Kosovo without paying for a taxi. In the end, we paid a chap €30 to take us 46 kilometres over these pretty wild mountain roads where there were cows just in the middle of the street. And it was quite steep, so at one point our driver had to stop and fill up his car with more water. So we finally arrived in the lovely little town of Peja. And the first thing we did was head to a cafe where we got a delicious coffee and booked a hotel for the night. And then we were ready to do some sightseeing, so we headed straight to this red monastery, and the paintings inside were phenomenal. But you know we're here for the natural sights, and Peja is on the doorstep of the Rogova Valley. We hitched a ride with a really lovely stranger, and then we began our hike in the mountains. It was a really beautiful area, but sadly the weather turned really quickly and we had a thunderstorm approaching. I was convinced we were going to get struck by lightning, so we made our way down the mountain as quickly as possible, but we took a different route and we couldn't find the pathway, and then we were worried that we might step on a landmine, which are common in this area. It was very stressful, but eventually we made it down to safety and had lunch by this meadow. We ended up hitching a ride back to the main road with a lovely mum and son who gave us some wine on the journey. The storm grew even bigger in the afternoon and we watched it from our hotel. Now it's time for a big adventure as we try out our first ever Via Ferrata, which is a climbing route fixed to a mountainside with metal steps, cables and ladders. We went to the shop to hire gear and a guide, but the workers seemed to suggest we didn't need a guide and would be fine on our own. They explained that there were 2 different routes we could do, one was difficult and one was moderate. And if we struggled at the first challenge, which is this sheer wall here, then we could just take the more moderate route. As you can see, I wasn't a big fan of that first section where we really had to lean back to climb upwards. But the staff really downplayed how challenging the difficult route would be and said that kids even do it. So we thought, well, we managed that section, we'll be okay on the rest of it. But the scary thing with Via Ferrata is you have to travel in one direction, so if it suddenly becomes too scary, you can't turn back, you have to keep going. There wasn't anyone else doing this route today, we were the only people on the side of this mountain. And as soon as we headed right on the difficult route, we regretted it instantly. I wanted to turn back straight away, but the lunges to go the other direction were just too difficult. I've never really suffered from vertigo before, but this was another story, and my legs were shaking like a jackhammer. We were 300 metres above the valley floor, just clinging onto this cliff. Some of the steps were just a 6-inch pole poking out the wall, and the lunge to the next one was almost impossible for me, and I'm not exactly a short person, so I have no idea how kids do this route.
There are quite the birds here, so...
It was hands down the scariest experience of my life.
How was that, Lauren? Yeah? Out of 10?
Horrible.
Horrible.
0.
0.
-1.
You just curled up in a fetal
I think
position.
I've got shit in my pants.
I was relieved when we reached the top, but the adrenaline didn't stop there as we found some fresh bear shit on our trail on the way back down. The town of Paya was home to a lot of stray dogs, so every time we walked through there for dinner, we went and said hi to them. Kosovo is home to wild bears, but there's only about 100 left in the country. Sadly, many have been stolen from the wild and put in horrible tiny cages outside restaurants to entertain people. Luckily, the Four Paws charity has taken all of the bears out of captivity in Kosovo and put them into the bear sanctuary in Pristina, where they have a much better life. It's definitely not as good as being in the wild, but they have pretty big enclosures and are well looked after here.
The little one.
The next day we caught a bus to Prizren, which is the second largest city in Kosovo, and a lovely place to just relax and enjoy a coffee with a view of the mosques and churches. It also makes a great base to go and explore the surrounding mountains, so we headed off on a hike to this gorgeous crystal clear lake. We didn't meet anyone else on this walk, it felt very remote, and on our way back Craig spotted a wild bear up on the hill.
Stopping a lot to get bugs and things.
We literally couldn't believe our luck. As I said, there's less than 100 wild bears living in Kosovo, and we happened to see one. They're so rare that this isn't a place that you carry bear spray like we would in America, so when he started walking our way, we decided to make our way back down the mountain.
See that? Maybe it's our time.
We were a little sad to leave Kosovo as we really loved it, but now it's time to explore North Macedonia. From the capital of Skopje, we did a day trip to Matka Canyon, which was really impressive and unexpected. After visiting the canyon, we left Skopje and made our way to Ohrid. One of the main attractions here, and also in the Balkans, is to come and see this church on Lake Ohrid. So we visited a few times so we could see it in the different light throughout the day. And then it was time for us to make our way to Thessaloniki in Greece before our flight to Georgia.